Madeleine, you're the CEO and the founder of betahaus, which is the largest co-working space in Europe, with locations in Berlin, Hamburg, Sofia and Barcelona. Since 2009, you've been organizing the startup competition Beta Pitch, which today takes place in cities all over the world. In your early life, you did a stint at the German Bundestag, but you didn't like the hierarchy and the non-creative work atmosphere, so you founded betahaus. Madeleine, the vision I presented to us from the students seems to reflect the spirit that we encounter in the betahaus as well. Even now, large corporations send delegates to the betahaus to connect with the startup community. Why do they do that?
Yeah, this is really interesting development, which I want to discuss with you especially, is what I see that when we founded betahaus, all the really creative, intelligent people just use betahaus for a short term to apply for the next job at a big corporate. That was their biggest dream. Now, 6 years later, they don't think about it at all anymore. They want to work for themselves, they want to have their freedom, they want to choose on which project to work, where to work, how to implement their family life with their work life. And now the big corporates are coming, asking me to help them to find the creative people because they are not going to their headquarters anymore. So now the corporates have to come into betahaus and they sometimes jump into the cold water and they look very confused when they enter betahaus and they always ask me, can you work like that? Are those people really working? And then they send delegations trying to implement or trying to find out how startups and entrepreneurs work. And then they go back into their big corporations. And then I don't know what happened.
We'll discuss that later. Just want to ask one further question. Do you think that large corporations with hierarchically structured organization and creative work is compatible? Can you work creatively in such an environment?
Yeah, we discussed that, Mr. Lottelbach and me earlier, and he thinks that big corporations will die. I think that some of them will still survive, so I think it's very, very important that they change their mindset. And the only thing what we can do as betahaus is to provide a neutral platform where all the different players can meet and exchange their wisdom and their experience from a different point of view when it comes to work. Yeah.
Janina, you're the new Executive Vice President of Human Resources at Siemens, and you're also serve as the Chief Diversity Officer. Prior to that, you worked in various positions at Siemens in human resources, corporate executive development, and strategy. You worked in Germany, Italy, and China. You just heard Madeleine said that the young people don't flock to big corporations anymore. What do you do at Siemens to counteract this trend?
Well, actually, I would debate and say, well, it depends on where you're talking about it, right? And we saw in the presentation of the students, what we're having here, what we're discussing here, is a very Western discussion and a very privileged discussion. And here in that room, and everyone who has been thinking about that, is the elite in the entire world that is thinking about it. And so my answer would really be, it depends on where you go. If we had the same discussion somewhere in Africa, somewhere in rural Indian areas, this would be a completely different debate. And that is something where I think is an arrogance of us to really believe that what we have just been discussing is the only thing that matters to people. And therefore, I think it really, the answer of it depends is, of course, like always, a very nice one to have. But I think you have to look at where you are. What we are trying to do, and of course there's a long way, of course, for us to go with Siemens as well, to really provide a lot of different alternatives on how you can actually work. Mm-hmm. So definitely betahaus. You will find it only in some of our spaces. Mm-hmm. But you will also find people in our company that don't want that yet. And I said that in the workout group before. We have managers that kind of need to manage 4 generations. Okay? You have people that are younger than 20, and you have people that are older than 60. Mm-hmm. And they want to work in a different style, and they want to be managed in a different style. And I think this is also what leadership is about. The leadership of the future cannot manage like the baby boomers and the Generation X had, was managing and was successfully managing. Globalization, digitalization, actually all that makes an impact. But I really believe, and I like that also, that one of the initiatives that you presented was education. because I think education really is a weapon for everyone, and it's basically the access for a lot of things, democracy, freedom, however you want to define that. So coming back to Siemens, I believe if you really want to work in a very cool startup environment with a lot of flexibility, with a lot of processes or whatever, you might want to join some of our ventures. But I don't believe that everyone wants that. I think there is still people there that would like to have some corporate structures, some international environment, that would like to have some interactions, want to focus more on engineering or more on sales, whatever it is. And I think this is also what we could provide. What I'm hoping for, and what we're trying to achieve, that we actually mix and make those worlds a little bit more fluent in learning from each other and allowing participation also in a different way. And definitely what I would agree is like hierarchical management is not going to be valid and existing anymore in the future.
Thank you. Our third. Our third guest is Rolf Christof Dienst. Rolf, you're the founder of the venture capital firm Wellington Partners. You've been a leading entrepreneur in the venture capital industry for over 30 years, and you played a key role in shaping the German venture capital landscape. And one of your entrepreneurial initiatives included also the foundation of the Entrepreneurial Center at the LMU here in Munich. Rolf, you have just seen the initiatives presented to us in Division Y. From a venture capital point of view, in which one would you like to invest?
All of them. All of them. But before that, I want to come back to the question whether the big companies will go away. I don't believe it, and I'll give you a little quote. My daughter, age 33, Georgia, left from Google to go to Google X in San Francisco. And she called me after about 2 weeks and said, "Dad, it's shocking. This modern organization, how old is it, maybe 15 years, 60,000 people, is as bureaucratic as you can't believe. It's unbelievable. I don't know how they can do it." Another 2 months later, she called me and said, "You know, it's amazing. It's a bureaucratic organization, but a lot of things done." So I just want to say, don't count the big companies out. I think there is a lot of entrepreneurial spirit, and I see a lot of companies that are actually fostering entrepreneurial thinking in these big organizations. And I have to say that one of my initiatives was in 1983. I co-started the TVM Techno Venture. That was the first venture capital initiative at Siemens. And the view that Mr. Nerger, at that time the CFO, said, if we can go only in the 10-year period, 1 or 2 interesting young people out of Siemens, to take up this challenge, then we have won already, because it sets an example for the whole organization. So coming back to where would I invest? Let me say where we have invested. We have strongly invested in life science, where the drug development is extremely difficult and for venture capital basically impossible to finance because it takes like 15 years. However, medtech is a very interesting period, even for American companies coming to Europe, because it's regulatory much better. We have invested in green tech. We have been very disappointed about sudden disappearing of interest in the green tech field in the last 4 years, sort of. So we all went there with a lot of it. I still, in my now new life, sort of as a retired man, but this is very interesting. And the whole internet, if I remember, in '97, I was the first CEO to start Immobilien Scout, and shit, I had no idea what we were going for, And a couple of years later, we sold this company in the first and second transaction, then the Deutsche Telekom, who also didn't know what to do with it. But if you are in an area that grows, you cannot do too many mistakes. Problem in the future will be, where are areas that really grow? And you have to spot them. And if you are not in an area that grows, you have to be twice as careful.
Thank you for that. There are many creative people in Germany, and some say that the entrepreneurial spirit is not really spread widely within the Generation Y. And then we have people in the startup community in the betahaus, and there are many, many entrepreneurs. So there seems to be a disconnect of what people say in surveys.
I cannot hear this anymore. This is a discussion I had in all the internet. Germany doesn't have entrepreneurs. What a bullshit. Go through Germany. You have in every village, you have an entrepreneur who conquers the world with a team of, 200, 300 people with one specific product. This is absolute bullshit. What we do not have enough probably is internet entrepreneurs that discover the whole world, you know, and like Google, etc. There are many reasons. I've just been asked from the ETH to help on the study. Why don't we have this in Europe, or why don't we have it in Germany? Very difficult, and one of the problems is we do not have the same sources of capital that is available for venture in the US. That is, and there are reasons why it is not available, but it's simply fact is it is not available. And if you just think that our investment company, Hilo in London, we were so proud, finally, we got 50 million in the next round of financing, we thought that is it. And a few months later, Uber got 1.8 billion. I mean, what do you do?
What can you do to create such an investment environment here?
That's an evening discussion. But let me tell you, there are more, and my first discussion at the entrepreneurship center, I always said, who of you wants to be an entrepreneur? And there were sort of maybe 8% of the team. Today, 40%. Everyone is really interested to at least give it a try, you know, and even in a big organization, but he wants to give it a try. So I think all this, negativism and the future is bad. This is bullshit. We have a great opportunity all over. In Europe, in Germany, we have no, sorry.
Agree to that. But if I compare, and you mentioned a few countries where I've worked, I think when I look at Germany, one of the things that I can see that the diversity in the German society, in German education systems, is definitely lower than in some other countries. And I think when you're talking about entrepreneurship, one of the reasons that you might actually see there that, you know, the kind of like the thinking what people have is a little bit more limited. Because also that is, for example, what we figure out is like the German young generation is not that willing to actually go abroad. They tend to like to stay here, you know, rather than going somewhere else. And you have different nations where this is a completely different mindset, but that's also economic stability that we're having, you know, being a pretty rich country, everyone is like pretty comfortable being here, so why would they leave? But I think this is also something that we have to bring in there. And from a society and governmental perspective, I think Germany really needs to reflect on that. Where would they like to stand in 50 years from now, and even in 10, honestly, when it comes to, for example, managing immigration and bringing much more brain power into the country? Because demographically, we're going to die out. And I think this is also something where other countries have been much more proactive over the past years and maybe having been more attractive for immigrants from around the world. And I guess if you would look at that and you see that in Berlin, kind of like the most international environment that you could actually see in Germany, then you're pretty much like getting an idea of what could actually happen to somewhere else in the world. I mean, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, in my work environment, it's super natural that we have a diverse team. Some of my team members, I even don't know where they're actually coming from. It just matters that they speak English. One teammate, actually, she had to marry her husband so she could get a work visa. That was really difficult. I advised her not to marry him for the reason of the visa, but she said she loves him. So, so definitely we need something different there. And I think we just need more platforms where people can meet, where entrepreneurs can meet people with money, where entrepreneurs can meet people with wisdom from another point of view. So I think more beta houses would be the solution.
It may be actually a society that allows more failure.
Yeah, that's always
Look at our education system that the Germans are very proud of. Distinction comes after 4 years, right? After 4 years, kids being 10 years old, this is pretty much like one of the definitions of what it comes. When you look at, who does an A level, who gets a graduation, whatever, it is also pretty much like very, very traceable in Germany. It really matters which society you are born in, whether your parents are educated, whether they're rich or not. It's not very fluid. And I think this is also something that then has an impact on the entire society. And allowing failure and having people not having straight curriculums, and this is also what I'm trying to promote in our organization. You can learn so much from mistakes, actually much more than from success sometimes. And I think this is what culturally, and also in the companies, we need to learn more. And I think then you come to what you're also doing.
So I sit on the board of a company in Berlin with about 300 employees, internet plus sort of related with it. And I asked them, 46% of the workforce is German. Only 46. 25 different nationalities. So I think this is a wonderful model. They don't know, they don't care where they buy. They speak English.
isn't it sometimes that management plays a role when it comes to new initiatives and new innovation? In my line of work, I often talk to people that say innovation, well, management levels are the bottleneck. So when there are new ideas coming up from the bases, from the employees, they don't find its way through. Especially that's the case in large corporations. Siemens is an often quoted example. And I just wanted to ask you, like, again, do we need less management levels? Do we need a more democratic company, vision of the company?
So I can just talk about my short experience in work life. So when I worked at the Bundestag, we had like 5 hierarchies on 3 meters office space. And at betahaus, we have almost no hierarchy. But 2 years ago, our employees came to us, me and my 2 co-founders, and said, "You are our bosses. You need to start acting like bosses." And then we were like, "Oh no, how do we do that?" So we had to learn to lead a team. And I think that's a problem in some young startups, that the founders are very great in innovation and creating new ideas, but when it comes to the management level, they don't know in which direction, they don't know how to guide their teams. So this is where they can definitely learn something from the corporate seniors. Yeah.
Okay, is that your opinion too? Do you think you have enough managers, or do you less?
Well, we have been looking at our strategy. We definitely put out some hierarchy levels, right? Because we actually saw that we had too many. This is what we call our Siemens Vision 2020. I believe it is about like how do you manage and how do you actually understand leadership. And that is like, is it all hierarchy? And I said that already before, or is it more horizontal? Where's the knowledge pools? Where's the people that have something to say? Where's the people that actually could give you input? And if you only look in an org chart level, that will not work. But if you make yourself approachable, and digitalization is not only about Industry 4.0, it's also about social enterprises, like how can you communicate, it's about using the social media also internally, then I actually think you can actually initiate a know-how and the leadership style and decision-making that is different than maybe it used to be in the past. But I also believe that if you have a certain size of a company, you need some structure. Some structure that, in order to tell people also, who does what and bring things together. It's always a question of how you live structure.
I have the feeling that everybody is very positive towards the future, and you think the future is going to be there. You have to see that. And our presentators also are very, very optimistic. So you believe actually why this is going to happen. What makes you so optimistic? Veronica.
Well, I think there are 2 reasons why I'm optimistic. First, I'm still young and I might be naive, as I said before. But I think it's not only that. What I think I'm quite in a privileged position, definitely. I live in one of the most wealthy states in the world, or not wealthy, but at least I would say we really have a very social system compared to other places in the world. And also I'm healthy and I have a family and friends which I really love. So, but still I think that many people of us are in a similar situation, let's say, at least here in Germany. And still there are a lot of pessimistic people. And on the other hand, there are billions of people who, as I said before, live from less than $2 a day and are still optimistic in a way. So I think it's not the only reason for our privileged place that we are optimistic, but there's more to it. And even though I have not a lot of experience yet, what I've learned so far that with optimism, I always went quite much further than, it brought me much further than pessimism, even though I did not only achieve so far, of course. And what came into my mind is actually, I think it's quite a logical chain if you are optimistic, because optimism actually creates drive in a way, of course. And drive, if you see it in a physical way, makes movement. And movement makes then change. And I think that's a logical chain we should always have in mind. And that's why I'm optimistic.
Thank you, Veronica. Now we've heard very different views. On this topic, Rolf Christof Dienst says that we have a lot of entrepreneurial spirit in Germany, a lot of entrepreneurs. Then Janina Kugel says that big corporations are not as bad in the end, they're very innovative. And Madeleine von Mohl says that we need more better houses in the end. I would like
Virtual platforms where all the different players can meet. Let's call them betahaus.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to open the discussion with everyone in this room. Are we talking about realistic goals when we look at the vision why? And what would you like to ask our guests? I want to ask the question.
I can without a
Yes.
microphone, I guess. I mean, the panel discussion is called reality check on the vision why. What is the actual reality about the vision why? We're sitting here, we're in Germany. Maybe some student or some guy in Africa sits there and has to run 20 kilometers every day just to collect some water. So what's more important, to make the good even better, or to make the worse better in order to bring everybody to the same level, and then from there have real progress? What do you think?
It's both. Because what I meant is like when we talk about education. So for example, you were just mentioning it. I was just coming back from Africa, where really like small children walk to school because they have the chance to go to school, right? And no matter how long it takes. And by the way, it's also the only place where they can get something to eat. And that will actually bring in the South African society, which I'm talking about or referring to, brings them to a better position later on to really make their, to make their living. But the debate that we're having here, I think, is equally important. It's just always a question of how do you combine both. You cannot decide about the world. So everything that you, for example, were proposing, I think, is a certain perspective on the world, and other parts of the world would have a different one. But I wouldn't say that one goes with the other. I mean, because the world will never be equal. At least I don't believe, as long as I'm living, that this will be the case.
Any further questions? Do you want the microphone?
Martin, I'm the founder of several different businesses, and my question would be, how important is to create a culture of failure?
Well, I think this might be a question for you.
Culture of what? Of
Failure. So that
Behavior.
society can fail.
He doesn't know the word.
Failure.
Linda was talking.
I think that's a very important thing, because I remember when I was young, it was still the uncle so-and-so had to leave Germany because he failed and he had to go to Argentina. So I'm very happy that this is over, because as long as he has behaved or enduring his failure ethically, I think that's the most important thing. And ethics we haven't discussed here, that's a separate issue. I think that's the most important part in big and small businesses, that we all start understanding that this is actually that keeps our society together. Failure, look, I have invested probably in my life in 200 companies, and I would say at least 2/3 of those have failed, okay? And some have fortunately won, and the overall equation was okay, but it's a question how you fail and what you learn out of failure, and very many of those failures have actually taken the learnings out of the failure into their next life, in their next business, and have been extremely successful, and can quote a number of them.
Did you reinvest in them?
Yes.
Yes.
Some of them, yes. No, I never invested in businesses. I always invested in people.
And even if they failed before you reinvested?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, oh, yes. Sometimes I've done twice, I must but it's, this is the interesting thing, is really the human behavior during such a process of failure.
Do you have a culture of failure at Siemens?
Not everywhere we would like to have it. But I think it's like, we are so big that I think there is not that one Siemens culture all over. So I definitely have areas where that works very well. And what Rolf said is like people learning from their mistakes and make it much better. And there's areas where we are not yet at that point. What we need to get there.
Any more questions? Okay, give the mic.
Yeah, I don't need it, but I'll use the mic anyway. What surprises me that during all these presentations, there was no talk of that progress was not put into question, because there are large parts of the world where progress is not considered good. We're talking from a standpoint of European enlightenment. And what I was wondering, for example, human rights is put into question by a lot of different political models throughout the world, and we have a very European perspective here. And how far do you guys, up on the panel there, consider conservative movements, religious movements, anti-democratic movements to be a problem for your companies or your investments when it comes to a global perspective? Is that a problem for Siemens, for example?
Well, yes, it is in some areas, but I think you're coming exactly what you said and what I also tried to say in the beginning. It always depends which perspective you're looking at things. And yes, we do have our corporate cultural identity. And sometimes we know that what we would like to culturally aspire, not to go into geopolitics, what you, for example, mentioned is like that any sexual orientation of every human being would be accepted no matter what. We are also operating in countries where this is legally not allowed. Okay, so this is a situation where we say we have different cultures in the company, but I can, impossibly ask someone to actually, display their sexual orientation if that would actually mean that they would be killed by the government. And so that is something where I think it is always going further and also beyond, but sometimes it's also like a pushback. And when it comes to the geopolitical things that I think you had in mind, of course it's a limitation for growth and for many of the things what we currently see in the world. And I think this is also when you look at politics and when you look at the economy, this is one of the biggest risks that current world is having. I mean, before that we talked about the Cold War that we don't have anymore, but there's different challenges. And that affects companies, that affects human beings, and obviously, of course, it affects us as citizens.
The only situation I was dealing with that big topic was when one of our betahaus members, she was a betahaus member since 5 years, and she regularly booked one of our meeting spaces. And then after 2 years, I asked her, what are you doing there? Who's meeting then? And she said, that's the Iranian opposition group, because betahaus is the only place where they feel safe. And I was like, okay, good to know. I don't know if we can feel safe now. But so we have a place for that as well.
So we have time for one more last question. And do you want the microphone? Okay. But please state your name and affiliation too.
Okay, my name is Thorsten Bögel from Munich, from the Humboldt Academy. I want to bring one question which is, I think, crucial at this point now, because we've heard that Generation Y, people are seemingly a bit fed up with politics and with big companies. They refuse to do some things. I think one is the word was ethics, that too many things were sacrosanct to profits in the last years, and now we face the effects what that has in the long run, especially concerning the environment and social societies. So I think the big question is now, leadership is here the theme. How can we lead away as leaders away from only profit orientation towards this ethical and holistic measures that we have to take into account? I think this is a very, very big question still unsolved, and I have no answer to that.
Rolf?
I don't have an answer to that, but the one explanation is that, again, this is a question asked out of a certain luxury area where we are living so well. I cruised 2 years ago, 3 months through India, and with buses and trains, etc. And I have the feeling they have different problems. They have certainly different problems. And it's education, it is being hungry, clean water. I mean, the very basics. So these people to go there, you should be a little bit more ethical. Maybe your cow should not be there, and you should preserve this environment. They don't understand each other. So we have to again see. Are we talking about Germany? Yes, correct. Are we talking about the whole world? We are not the schoolmaster of the world, and we have to be very careful. We are already considered being schoolmaster in Europe too much.
Now I'd like to end this short round with you with one question. I would like you to finish the sentence briefly. The most important driver of progress that has been presented to us in Division Y, in my opinion, is?
We have to fix up those columns down there. That's like the biggest image I got from your vision.
The most important initiative that you have identified is?
Tolerance. Do you have to say more?
No, that's it. Great. Rolf, the most important driver of progress is?
Education.
Thank you very much, Madeleine Gummer von Mohl.